Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari Kopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtadhara Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtadhara Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gauda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Hare Krishna. He's getting it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, Chapter 16, King Citraketu meets the Supreme Lord. Text 32. If everybody could please repeat after me. Sa Uttama Shloka Padabja Vishtaram Premashu Vaishar Upamehayan Muhu Premo Paruda Akila Varna Nirgamo Naivashakat Tam Prasammiditum Chiram Sa Uttama Shloka Padabja Vishtaram Premashuleshar Upamehayanmuhu Pnemo Paruda Kilavarna Nirgamo Naivashakatam Prasamidutam Chiram Uttama Shloka Padabja Vishtaram Premashuleshar Upamehayanmuhu Pnema Paruda Kilavarna Nirgamo Naivashakatam Prasamidutam Chiram Sa Uttama Shloka Padabja Vishtaram Premashuleshar Upamehayanmuhu Prema Paruda Kila Varna Nirgamo Naivashakatam Prasamidutam Chiram Saha. He. Uttama Shloka of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pada Abja of the lotus feet. Vishtaram, the resting place. Prema Ashru, of tears of pure love. Leshai, by drops. Upamehayan, moistening. Muhu, again and again. Prema Uparudha, choked with love. Akila, all. Varna, of the letters. Nirgamaha, the coming out. Na, not. Eva, indeed. Ashakat, was able. Tam, unto him. Prasamiduditum, to offer prayers. Chiram, for a long time. Translation, commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. With tears of love and affection, Citraketu repeatedly moistened the resting place of the Supreme Lord's lotus feet. Because his voice was choked in ecstasy, for considerable time he was unable to utter any of the letters of the alphabet to offer the Lord suitable prayers. Purport. All the letters of the alphabet and the words constructed by those letters are meant for offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maharaj Citraketu had the opportunity to offer prayers to the Lord by composing nice verses from the letters of the alphabet. But because of his ecstasy, for considerable time, he could not join those letters to offer prayers to the Lord. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.22, Idam hipum samtapasa shritasya va shrishtasya suktasya cha buddhidatayo avijto rata kavabir nirupito yaduta bashloka gunarna varnanam. If one has scientific, philosophical, political, economic, or any other abilities in one's perfection in his knowledge, he should offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by composing first-class poetry or engaging his talents in the service of the Lord. Citraketu wanted to do this, but he was unable because of loving ecstasy. Therefore, he had to wait for a considerable time before he could offer prayers. Om Garitamidandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanvaditamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karitvachalam Pangam Langai Tegirim Yakipatamaham Vande Shri Gurundiritanam Vanchakabudibhisha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So translation again. With tears of love and affection, Citraketu repeatedly moistened the resting place of the Supreme Lord's lotus feet. Because his voice was choked in ecstasy for a considerable time, he was unable to utter any of the letters of the alphabet to offer the Lord suitable prayers. So there's the Bhakta, there's the Bhakta, then there's Bhakti, and there's Bhagavan, the three B's, right? So Bhakta is the devotee, and then the process of Bhakti, there's 9 processes of Bhakti as described by Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto, which we should be starting soon, relatively soon. We're nearing the end of this particular canto. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada, Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma, Nivedanam. So there's 9 processes of devotional service. So Shravanam, Kirtanam, which are the 2 most important, hearing and chanting about Krishna. Shravanam, Kirtanam. So this hearing and chanting, as we've heard and chanted many times, is most important, and it is practically the means by which one awakens their Krishna consciousness. Nitya, as stated by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabanoy Shavanari Shura Chitta Koridoy, that this original Krishna consciousness is in the hearts of all living entities, and by the process of hearing and chanting about Krishna, it awakens. So one of the aspects also is, one of the processes of devotional service is also prayer, mentioned. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, prayer, to offer prayers. So the process of prayer is very important, and it's one of the 9 processes of devotional service. And the chanting of Hare Krishna is a prayer. Please engage me in your pure devotional service, which means please disengage me from the service of this material world, or the service of the enemies of the living entity. Means internal enemies, lust and anger and greed and all these things. So disengage me from that and engage me in your service, Krishna. And as one of our acharyas mentions, and Srila Prabhupada quotes also in his lectures and his books, Kama dinam katina katida palita dornideshas Tesham jata maina kurano trupanopashanti utsarajaitan atiyatapate sampratam labdi buddhist twamayata sharanam abhaya mamyuk shvatmidase. So he's saying that I have surrendered, I've become a servant, a very faithful servant of my wicked desires, which are based on lust, anger, greed, all these different things. I've become a good servant of those things. But now, my intelligence has awakened, which means by hearing from devotees, by reading Srila Prabhupada's books, which are the most important books, by the way, that my intelligence is awakened, and I'm rejecting these hellish desires. I'm not chasing after them anymore. And I'm running to you, Krishna. Please engage me in your devotional service. Please engage me. So, also in the 11th canto, Krishna is speaking to Uddhava Gita. You have the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaking to Arjuna. You have the Uddhava Gita, Krishna speaking to Uddhava. So, actually, I'm not sure if it's Uddhava Gita. But anyways, I know it's in the 11th canto, that particular verse about the sadhus, or the saintly persons. How does it start? No. They cut the attachments in the mind.
Oh, yeah.
Satsisat jati buddhiman. Manuchindanti manovyasa uktabi. Yeah, Uddhava Gita, okay. So this particular verse, it's quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's not much of a purport in the 11th canto. But in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a purport there by Srila Prabhupada. So this particular verse, it is describing that saintly persons, hearing from saintly persons, hearing from devotees, what does it do? It cuts the material attachments within the mind. What else does the verse say?
Well, the first thing it says is that have bad association.
Yeah. Giving up bad association, accept the good association of devotees, and by that association. Yeah, be intelligent and associate with wise devotees, and they will cut these particular attachments within the mind, which we should understand by careful deliberation that these attachments are actually they're not good. They're not wholesome. They're not really worth being attached to. And therefore we should be happy when saintly persons speak to us and cut them. So yeah, going back that this kama, dinam, katina, katita, so this lust, anger, greed, these different obstacles or enemies, you could say, for the transcendentalist or the devotee, they're real. It's not that it's a joke. They're real. And therefore we pray every day that please engage me in your pure devotional service, because if we're not engaged in Krishna service, then we have to be engaged in other service. And that means the service of the illusory energy. Now, although being engaged in Krishna service, because someone say, hey, I'm praying every day, I'm chanting Hare Krishna every day, and I'm praying to be engaged in Krishna service, and I am engaged in Krishna service. Okay, great. That's good. Wonderful. But while engaged in Krishna service, it's not that just because one is engaged in Krishna service that automatically those enemies don't present themselves. They may present themselves, especially if one's not fixed. They present themselves, and they may be problematic. And therefore, one of our particular acharyas, also Raghunath Das Goswami, and his Manu Shiksha, Teachings to the Mind. It's a small book, very but he says that while we're progressing on the path of devotional service, he says it's translated as thugs. There might be some thugs who stop us, right? Like if we go to a bad part of the neighborhood, there's thugs in bad parts of the neighborhood. Even here in San Diego, believe it or not, we have some thugs, some gangsters, if you go to the wrong part of the neighborhood. Like, I was talking with one guy at the lounge a few days ago, Thursday night, and he was saying how he lives, I forget, he said he lives by Skyline, Paradise Hills. So he said, I live in... he said, I live in Paradise Hills. I said, oh yeah, is it paradise? He said, no, not really. And he says, it's close to Skyline. And I said, oh, okay, I know Skyline. Growing up, I heard of the glories of Skyline and avoided it. But, there's a lot of, you could say, gang activity over there. And the guy was telling me, no, I don't know how much he was exaggerating. I don't know, but I think he was honest, at least to a degree. I don't doubt him, but he was saying, yeah, it's cheap rent. For 3 bedrooms, it's like $1,800 or something, and pretty good in San Diego. And he says, I just have to kind of tolerate, what goes on in Skyline. And he says sometimes you hear these gunshots, and you see helicopters going over. So they're fighting with each other, killing each other and stuff. But he said, yeah, I just he said usually if you just don't mess with them and you don't, it's okay. And I said, all right, well. He said he didn't mind. So, anyways, but you have, you could say, thugs or gangsters, or what do they call them in India? Huh? Gundas, yeah. Yeah, gundas. Oh, yeah? Oh, really? There you go. I don't know if anybody knew that, but now you know. Thug comes from India, an Indian word. So, so you may just be going down the street, minding your business, right? Whistling, skipping, right? Picking flowers, thinking happy thoughts, And then the thugs may stop you. So this is what Raghunath Das Goswami, he brings up this point in a verse. He says, you're engaged in a devotional service, you're going nicely, but then you're stopped. So then what do? They're threatening you. They're threatening your life. They kill you. Of course, this is all, say, on a different platform he's talking about, but these particular enemies of the devotee, lust, anger, greed, these different things, they stop and then they're threatening. So what is a devotee supposed to do? What does he say? He says you call out. You call out to Krishna. You call out to the spiritual master. You call out to the devotees. And then they'll come and help. Just like you call out to the police. If there's police nearby and there's some thug activity, you call it to the police, they'll come and they'll help. But if you don't call, just say, okay, well, then they don't, so we have to call out. And therefore, in the process of hearing and chanting, or the process of prayer, there's a particular quality to it. To the prayer means it has to be a sincere call. Just like a child may call their parents, right? You know that story, the boy who cried, what is it, wolf? Yeah. You know what happened to him?
Did he get eaten?
Huh?
Did he get eaten?
I don't know. What happened to him?
I think he did.
Yeah, he did. I believe so.
Did they eat him?
After the third time.
Yeah.
He kept calling, with no wolf, he was just joking.
Yeah, he was just joking. He was, wow. That is real spiritual. So he was calling, oh, woof, woof, right? And then people they come out, and then there was no woof. Oh, I'm just joking. I'm just joking, And then he'd call again. Oh no, I'm just joking. So then he called one time, and they're like, oh, here he goes again, Bhakti Bozo out there calling again, crying wolf. All right, we'll just forget about it. And then all of a sudden, he didn't show up that night. Oh, what happened to him? Oh, well, yeah.
I think they ate the sheep.
Oh, really?
I don't.
Okay. Well,
Either way.
it sounds more dramatic if they ate him. So let's call it poetic. Say poetic license. Well, how about we'll make up our own? We'll make up our own version.
He ate sheep and him.
Yeah. Anyways, that wasn't really the main, you could say, point I wanted to bring out. But he was crying, and now whatever the details are, we'll figure out later. But the point is, he was crying for so-called help, but he was not really serious about it. And then when he really needed help, he cried out, and they didn't help him. Now, of course, it is different, and that's why this wasn't the main, point I wanted to say. But it's different because if we actually call out to Krishna, he will help us. So you could say the main thing is that I wanted to point out was that there has to be a certain quality to it, which I guess relates to the boy who cried wolf, because in other words, it has to be sincere, it has to be real. So the quality is that we actually should realize that we actually need help, that we need to be engaged in Krishna service, or else we're in big trouble. So we actually need to realize that. Just like Srila Prabhupada brought up about a parrot, right? Like Pavamana Prabhu, right? Sampada, maybe Sampada is watching. Hare Krishna. They have their parrot, right? Shukdev. Now, Shukadev, I don't know how much of a Goswami he is, but anyways, Shukadev, he's a parrot and he could repeat things. Hare Krishna, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva. Someone told me the other day that, which I haven't heard, but they said, I think Prabhu Shakti told me that Shukadev Pavamana Prabhu's parrot used to say, Rajavadu, for our old Rajavadu Mataji here. So the parrot would chant Rajavadu's name. So the parrot may be chanting Hare Krishna, but then when a bird comes, he's not going to chant Hare Krishna, he's just going to squawk, right? Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, a bird or a cat comes. If a cat comes, the parrot's not going to chant Hare Krishna, they're going to squawk. So, in other words, people, the idea is that the Hare Krishna chanting that we're doing, the praying that we're doing, it needs to go deep in the sense that we always need help actually, but when the tests come, we call out to Krishna. When the thugs come, we call out to Krishna. Not that when the test comes and we call to our mother, or when the test comes we roll up in a ball like a fetus, or when the tests come, when Maya presents herself, or when the thugs present themselves, we say, very good, I was actually hoping you would come, I've been actually calling you secretly. I've been chanting Hare Krishna, but I've actually been calling you. Please come and save me from the devotees. So instead of that, but we should actually train ourselves to call out to Krishna. And therefore, in the chanting of the holy names, there's 10 offenses that we need to avoid. And you could say, oh, well, that's too difficult. I can't avoid them. Well, there's 10 events. Then if we can't avoid them at this particular point, there's 10 offenses we need to try to avoid. It's a very important stage to come to try to give up the 10 offenses. Because some would say, oh man, that sounds too difficult, right? This offense, that offense, so many offenses, I can never do that. Then they're not really trying. But it comes to a point where, okay, we hear them and then we're trying to give them up. And that gives a possibility, that gives a chance of us actually being successful. Which you could say most of them may be easy, maybe. But 3 difficult ones are offending the devotees. There's different ways to offend the devotees. We all know the different ways how to offend devotees. Holding on to material attachments and being inattentive. These are, out of the offenses, most difficult to renounce. And about being inattentive, I mean, when it's time to chant, it's time to chant. It's not time for, other things. But I was hearing one devotee bring this up, that it's interesting because the mind wanders, and it wanders different places. But if you think about it, it wanders only to a few places, really. Of course, there's millions of places it can wander, but under the heading of 3 things. And he was bringing it up. Controllership means, how can I control things or whatever? Enjoying, how can I enjoy whatever? And what's the last one? Proprietorship, whatever. How can I get this? How can I get that? Whatever. So it wanders to that usually. Now, of course, if it's wandering to devotional service, like this devotee was mentioning, oh, when I was chanting my japa, my mind wandered to Prabhupada. I was thinking, okay, well, that's that's a quite a transcendental, wholesome wander, right? There's definitely less wholesome, to say the least, wanderings that I've heard of. So yeah. Anyways, but we should know the 10 offenses and try to avoid them, and this offenses chanting, and then it'll be very good, because then we're training ourselves to call out to Krishna. We are we'll be actually, you could say, reawakening our love for Krishna, which is the whole point. And we could come to a similar, we're hearing all this about Citraketu, and he's feeling the ecstasy, and he could hardly speak, and all these different, right, things we're hearing about in the Bhagavatam, and we hear about that Acharyas experience. So we could also, in our own way, experience some of these transcendental emotions. But it's not, it's not cheap, and therefore we need to. The process of chanting, or the process of prayer, or the process of Krishna consciousness may seem very simple. In many ways it is, but there's a lot that goes into it. So we should try to understand. So does anybody have any question or comments?
Yeah, because, William, I'll just ask it. You mentioned the different things that are blocking us from calling out purely, and you said everyone knows the different types of offenses to devotees, or everyone knows of it,
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that, though.
Okay.
As someone who's has to deal with that issue of offending devotees, what are some of the flavors or types or kinds?
Okay.
And if you want to go into it, what are the results?
Okay. So there's different ways. Of course, generally, I mean, whatever this one is like very severe, and it generally doesn't happen, and very rare. But one is to kill a devotee. That's obviously an offense. Another one is to speak, you could say, ill, in an ill way of was it illy? I don't know, that's a word. Speak ill of a devotee. Now, or criticize. Now, this is brought up because it says that, okay, we shouldn't criticize. Okay, well, but we say, oh, well, I mean, we see people. I mean, Srila Prabhupada criticized people. So what? Our acharyas criticize people. So what's the deal there? So that's brought up that, just like in the Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami, he's speaking, right, about the glorious Krishna and his devotees, right? The beautiful Bhagavatam, right? But we see in the first canto, he starts talking about the materialists, right? What is it? What they do in the night, what they do in the day. Nidriya, right? They're just, so he gets into it, how they're wasting their time, how they're wasting the human form of life. So then someone may question, well, why is Shukadeva Goswami talking about that? I mean, it's like, come on, we want to hear about Krishna, we want to hear about that, right? But it's brought up that he's doing that for a very good reason, and that reason is to teach. He's teaching the devotees. This is not the path at all. This is the path of degradation and suffering. So don't even think about it. He's teaching that way. So in that way, he has the right to criticize. So Srila Prabhupada also said, sometimes criticizing other spiritual groups or spiritual leaders. Because someone would say, well, that doesn't seem so, right? That doesn't seem so interfaith friendly. It seems so peaceful, and right? But Srila Prabhupada says that, or it's mentioned that to give people the right idea, what's right, what's wrong, who's a swindler, who's authentic spiritual practitioner. And there's many cases of Prabhupada doing this throughout his books and conversations and morning walks. So there is scope to criticize. I was thinking that sometimes people are very good fault finders, they're very expert at it. And I was thinking that if this was just purified, they became Krishna conscious rather than fault finding conscious. If they became Krishna conscious, they could actually be very good gurus. Because, it's part of the duty of the guru to see what the disciple needs to do to progress. So they'd be very good gurus, but a lot of the times they just remain fault finders and unhappy. So, yeah, there is scope, but you could say it's a difficult thing because, okay, I may criticize someone, or I may criticize a devotee for the purpose of teaching or whatever, but how much do I really care about that devotee, or how much am I really doing it in, you could say, in a pure way, rather than an impure way. So it's difficult sometimes. So anyways, so killing the devotee, speaking ill. What other ones are there? One that comes to mind is to not be happy upon seeing a devotee. Now, someone may say, well, I'm just miserable, so I'm not happy seeing anybody. They'll say, all right, well, you should be happy because, by practicing Krishna consciousness, the result, you should be happy. So they say, well, it's not working. We'll say, all right, well, that's your misapplication, right? But one should be happy to see a devotee, and if they're not happy, then that's considered an offense. And you think, well, why is that an offense? What's the problem? Like, what am I supposed to be? Like some happy-go-lucky, I'm just happy to see you, right? But it's a result from what's going on upstairs, what's going on, within our conscious, or within our mind, that we want to say it upstairs or wherever the mind is, right? The mind could be many places. But it's a result of what's going on in our mind, in the sense that, like, we may be feeling, we may be talking bad about a person, for example, or whatever. There's so many things, and then when they walk into the room, okay, yeah, definitely we're not happy to see them, because, or we may not like them for some reason. Right? There's many reasons not to like people, apparently. We may not like someone, or we may be speaking ill of them, or thinking ill thoughts of them. So naturally, when we see them, we're not happy to see them. So, yeah. Now, of course, this is very complicated because we're talking about humans and interactions and everything like that. Because you could say, well, hey, I'm just upset with this person, so I'm not happy to see them. So is this not happy? Is this referring to you're perpetually not happy to see the person each time they walk in the door? Or is it just they did something to make you mad and naturally you're not happy to see them? So, anyways, there's all these kind of things going on. But the basic challenge that anybody in any organization has is to try to work together and to try to understand each other, and so it doesn't just become a breeding ground of offenses, because not working together, clashing, not understanding each other, and then it could turn into something very, very, very ugly. So anyways, there's different offenses, and you could say the reactions are different according to who we offend. Say the more advanced the devotee, the more advanced the reactions are, the bad reactions are. But of course, offending any devotee, there's reactions. And this is brought up in the 10th canto of when Kamsa was going to kill Krishna, trying to kill Krishna. It's a list of these of what happens. There's all different types of things. It says that. Anyways, I'm forgetting the particular. Anyways, there's all these bad things that happen.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any place for constructive criticism in Vaishnava philosophy?
Of course.
If we move out, because there are people who say, like even for kids and children, that you should tell them at least what's wrong, constructively telling them. Okay, yeah, thank you. So, sorry? Okay. I was asking, is there any place for constructive criticism in Vaishnava philosophy? Since like outside, like there are these terms that they use, critical review, constructive criticism, which helps one to progress. So if we say like nobody will tell anybody anything in that sense, then that sounds very utopian. And outside, like if we move, then there are people who try to tell you, oh, this is wrong, or what you do, idol worship, things like those. So they critically like tell things like those. And if we are not in a habit of like listening to any such thing, then it's very difficult to kind of face such people and survive generally in the world and give them the right kind of logic. Yeah, so just...
Okay, thank you. So constructive criticism, yes, there is room for that. Yeah. So the sadhus, by their words, they cut the attachments within the mind. So you could say the words are constructive criticism. So they're trying, the goal is not just to drive, it's not at all, but the goal is not to drive people into the ground for one's own pleasure. That's material. Just to make somebody look bad, to make them look like a fool, to paint a terrible picture of them, to not see from different angles of vision, to not appreciate the person, to not appreciate what the person's done or what the person's doing, but just to drive them into the ground. That's material, or you could say envious. But to see how you could try to help the person, that's the whole point of criticizing. The point of criticizing is to help the person, not to just criticize. There's a vast difference, and there's different results for it. I mean, reactions. So devotees, it's a great art how to criticize people, constructively criticize people, and how to have the right, you could say, mood or the right purpose in doing it to try to help the person, to see them advance, not for one's own pleasure, just to paint a bad picture of them, and because it's a problem, because people, they paint a bad picture of a person. One, they may be envious. They want what that person has, whatever it may be, some imaginative thing within their mind, respect or whatever. Or it may be that they're envious, or it may be that another thing is that they criticize people to make themselves look better. That, hey, this person's doing this, and I'm not doing that at all. Although I'm doing a lot of other stuff that, is not being mentioned. But but I'm not doing that at all, and therefore I'm superior here. I'm the real devotee, I'm really surrendering here, So it's a problem, because it's just not right, in the sense that it's questionable what's going on in people's minds sometimes. Because if one's not cent% surrendered to the spiritual master, and there is symptoms of it, which are not easy. If one's not cent% surrendered to the spiritual master, then their criticism is questionable, to say the least. So, anyways, going back to Bhajan Swami's briefly, is that what's the result? It's brought up in the Chaitanya Charitamrita of, there's two examples, Madhavendra Puri and Ramchandra Puri. I say Ramchandra? Yeah, Ramchandra Puri and Madhavendra Puri were serving their spiritual master Ishvara Puri. So, not getting into all the details, it's a long, beautiful pastime, but one was serving very humbly and the other one was not. He didn't have the right mood, he didn't have the right thing, and he was actually rejected, in essence, by his spiritual master. And from that, it was all from the wrong, critical. He became a criticizer of all Vaishnavas, and he became a very miserable person. And it said he became a dry speculator, and just, he developed all these Mayavadi tendencies more and more and more, and he became a criticizer of Lord Chaitanya himself. Which is interesting because one becomes a criticizer. It's amazing because the mind's so powerful. It's like they criticize people for imaginary things. Like Ramchandra Puri, he was criticizing Lord Chaitanya for something that wasn't even true. There was ants in the room, and Ramchandra said, you must be eating sweets. That's why there's ants in the room. And then he would invite all the devotees, and he would feed them a lot of prasadam. And he said, I heard that Lord Chaitanya's followers ate a lot of prasadam, and now I see it's true. He was the one who overfed them. So, pushed them, So a person becomes a criticizer of that which is, it's not even really happening. It's just happening in their mind. So it's a dangerous thing. Okay, Tyler, you have a burning question? You have the last question?
I had a quick reflection, and then I did have a question from the translation and the purport. When we were at the Brahmachari camp, Devarata's in LA, and we had the Vaishnava glorification class, remember we broke into groups, and then we all glorified a Vaishnava? Right? Yeah, and so we were in these groups, and groups of 4, and we all glorified a Vaishnava, and the best one went and presented in front of the audience. So Amoga, when he went and presented, he was glorifying, was glorifying a Vaishnava, and of the many things he glorified, he highlighted the fact that this Vaishnava, when dealing with others, especially when he was dealing with others that he knew that devotee was upset with or not that satisfied with, you couldn't tell in the way that he interacted with them. He interacted with everybody the same, whether he was satisfied with them or not, and that was a quality worth glorifying. From the Amalabhakta Swami, when I was in my hometown, he told me a story after he gave class, and it was about, I just looked up his name, it's Daruka, that's Krishna's charioteer? Yeah. So he was saying that Daruka was driving Krishna's chariot, and he was experiencing so much bliss that his hand wasn't steady. Yeah. So he turned to Krishna and said, hey, can you tone down the bliss? I got to drive this chariot. So Citraketu here, he wants to speak, but it says because of his ecstasy, he's unable to do so. So can you talk about that position? It's so hard to fathom that. You're experiencing so much bliss, but you have a yearning to do some service, and you can't even perform it because the bliss is too much. I mean, that's a really awesome concept.
Well, you experienced that, right?
But I just want to keep doing service.
Well, it's like, I mean, what to say about it? But it's he's experiencing it. It's been experienced by Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas and devotees. But you could say that, like Daruka, okay, he's fanning Krishna, but then he's feeling so much ecstasy, so he actually prays, okay, Krishna, please reduce this so I could do my service. So yeah, the main thing is that a devotee wants to do their service, but while engaged in their service, they may experience this ecstasy, and in some cases, may not be able to speak. Like Srila Prabhupada's shortest class I think he ever gave was Atlanta, Georgia, and which he started talking about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda, and Prabhupada just couldn't speak anymore because he was so experiencing so much, you could say, ecstasy, thinking about Lord Chaitanya's mercy, just couldn't speak anymore. But you could look it up. The class is there. Now, of course, there's cases of Srila Prabhupada experiencing that ecstasy and having a hard time speaking, but then he subdued that ecstasy so he could continue, his service, which is educating his disciples, which is the main service of the spiritual master, by the way, the education of the disciples, practically speaking, or enlightenment of the disciples through transcendental knowledge. So yeah, but if you want to read about all the details of the ecstatic, all this, then you could consult an Nectar of Devotion. Yeah.
Just one quick comment. I mentioned this before, but I had forgotten the intro to Citraketu's prayers. When we're going to start those prayers like tomorrow, next day, right? And I mean, I'm not blowing my own horn or anything, but you know that I'm into like far out meters and everything. I'm like a mother. And one of the prayers that that Narada taught him, the last one, had an incredible. Anyway, I won't change it now, but it's all short syllables. These prayers of Citraketu, I suddenly realized they're very hard to chant. They're very irregular. You'll see when we try to chant them.
I think it's because he was an
because usually they may be hard to chant, but now I get the meter. It's unusual, But these are very irregular, and you're going to find yourself, Anyway, you'll see when we go on. And now I realize why, because he's in such ecstasy.
Nice.
couldn't get the proper syllables.
All right. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.